What's up guys, Kito Chee here, and this is another magic review. Actually, it's more of a comparison video and review at the same time. And today it's going to be about Goshman's Black Spongeballs. And this is going to be particularly a review, but a comparison as to why I think these should be the ideal Spongeballs that you should be using as opposed to your typical red Spongeballs. So, as far as magic goes, and particularly Spongeball magic, it's been practically been done, or at least learned, by every magician. Every magician ought to at least know one Spongeball routine with at least a few of these. Maybe just 2, 3, 4, however many they like to use. And I am no exception. I personally love the Spongeball effect. I think it is probably one of my favorite tricks to do in general for people, just because you get that really nice feeling of having the magic trick happen in the spectator's hand when they're holding on to the balls, and it just, when they open their hand up, they get that feeling of the magic of the balls actually multiplying itself and whatnot. So because of this, plus the fact that these are so fun to play with, and just holding in my hand and so it's a very fun trick to do because you have a fun time just playing around with it and such. So now, even with all of that, despite this, one of the big issues that you'll automatically come across when you do this trick is that from a glance, using the red balls like these, it kind of makes the trick look like a very kid-like trick. Even though that is not the case, by just glance alone, it looks very kiddish to me and for a lot of people. And this right away can shy magicians away from wanting to do this trick, especially if they are mostly doing adult walk-around gigs or performing magic for adults. This is, unless you're trying to be that typical comedy magician or just your classy magician, yeah, you can go for these. But I think if you're like me, you want to be a bit more modern, then you're probably going to want to choose a more classier and cooler color such as black. I'll get more into this in a second. And the other thing too is, oftentimes when you pull these out, the number one thing that this reminds them of is clown noses and Rudolph, all that stuff. It just doesn't really present a professional or very mysterious image, so to speak, because they're kind of associating this with killer clowns, Rudolph, or silly clowns, so to speak. So might not be the ideal image that you want to leave for your spectators. Also, because this is such a common trick for magicians, once you pull these out, kids, adults, right away will, most often the time, recognize, oh, I know this trick, oh, I've seen this trick before, right? Because once you pull out the ball and it's red and such, they'll right away just be like, oh, I know this trick, oh, I've seen this trick, or I know how this is done, so to speak, so they think. So using this, as great as it is, as great as the trick already is with these, all of those reasons are legitimate reasons as to why magicians may shy away from using Spongeballs in their magic routines. I know Stephen Bridges even did a video a while back as to stating why he did not like doing Spongeball magic in his routines and such. And I even mentioned it, well, why don't you just change the color of it to make it a bit more classier, cooler, fit your style? He never replied to me about it, but either way, let's get into the black Spongeballs that I now use. So these are particularly Goshman's black Spongeballs. These are the ultra soft Spongeballs to be exact. These are actually both from Goshman. However, you will notice right away the size difference between these. So when I used the red Spongeballs, I was a teenager and my hands were definitely much smaller. So naturally the 1-inch Spongeball was ideal for me. I could just hold it in my hand, I could palm and such pretty easily. But as my hands got bigger, obviously this started to feel tinier to me, so I figured why not not only just change the color, but I can increase the size a little bit just so it's a little bit easier for people who might be farther away from me to see something like this, especially because since it's black, depending on what you're wearing, you may have a slightly more difficult time to see this as opposed to this, because red obviously is commonly used probably because it's just easier to see for people, right? If you're at a far away distance, you should even still see this fine, whereas this, you might have a more difficult time to see what's going on. However, I think this is also a bit of a pro, because depending on when you're wearing as well, you might get away with more when you're doing this trick, because, well, black kind of seems to blend in with most of what you're wearing, so to speak. Like if you're like me and you wear a lot of black, then you're probably gonna get away with a few flashes, so to speak. So I mean, things like this where you're showing one ball and then you're just splitting that, because naturally I'm wearing black gloves right now because my hands are kind of cold, I can sort of get away with a little bit more if for whatever reason my moves aren't quite up to par as usual. So when I got these, I made sure that I got, well, first I got 2-inch sized Spongeballs, which were a little bit too big for me personally, because when I do my Spongeball routine, I like to be able to hold up to 10 if I can, because when I do my Spongeball routine, I like to finish where I have a spectator hold both their hands out. After I do a little routine where I try to get them to guess how many balls are in my hand, 1 or 2, etc., I'll finish it where I just hold all the balls in my hand like this, and I should be able to just hold it without any of the balls peeking out from the sides or from my fingers. So in this case, I had to reduce the size that I wanted to use. So instead of using 2-inch, I used 1.5. So it's a slightly bigger than the 1-inch that I used to use when I was a teenager. So now that my hands are bigger, I can still palm these pretty well, not too much difficulty. 2-inch though, I think if you're just using 4 balls at the most, you can still get away with whatever routine that you're doing and not have the Spongeballs kind of peeking out from your hand. So in my case, when you do buy these Spongeballs, the slightly bigger ones, you'll usually get them in a pack of 4, right? So I, of course, with my routine, I like to have up to 10, so I just bought 3 of the 4 packs. So I have two reserved, so if whatever happens, I lose one or I need to replace one of them, I can just use that one, and then if I'm short a few, then I can just buy an extra 4, which is awesome. So what I'm trying to say, guys, is if you feel at all that the Spongeball trick, the typical Spongeball trick, is too kiddish, too like silly in a way, you know, you're getting the reference of a clown nose or Rudolph, all that stuff. Just consider changing the color of the ball itself, because right away I myself think this is much more classier and cooler to do as opposed to this. Just the color itself can make a big difference in what you're doing, and that's been kind of proven in many other products, or so to speak, even with like shoes, clothing, all that stuff, and in this case possibly even magic. I realized just from the few times that I have done this, people don't right away recognize this trick, even though it is the same ball, so to speak. It's just a different color. So in their heads, they think, oh, this probably isn't the same trick that I've seen before, especially since it's not the same color. And in a way, it is true what they're thinking, because I'm not the same magician that they might have seen do this trick before with the red ball. I'm doing the trick, but I'm doing it in a slightly different way, in my own style and routine, and you're gonna see it in a much cooler color that is black. So with that said, guys, I definitely suggest if you've been hesitant with doing SpongeBall magic, or you've thought about it but you wanted to make it a bit more cooler, more mysterious, things like that, definitely consider picking up some black SpongeBalls for yourself. Or maybe if you have a different color preference, go for blue, go for green maybe. Who knows how many colors they actually have, but go with what suits your style and whatever can make you stand out better, as opposed to your typical color that is red with this trick. So also, guys, just keep in mind your hand size. So depending on how big your hand is, you might need to stick with the 1-inch ball, or maybe go for 2-inch, 1.5. Make sure you keep that in mind before you go and purchase a bunch of these, because I made that mistake of getting the 2-inch when I should have just gone 1/2 inch more with the 1.5-inch sponge ball. So that said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little review / comparison video in regards to Spongeballs for magic tricks. So if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope to see you guys in my future videos. Till next time, peace out.